This is Melinda. I can see that
Um,
you're.
there we go. Okay, there I go.
Hi, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
I am good. This is Melinda. Welcome to Day 3 Global Virtual Summit 2026. I hope you are
Thank you.
enjoying the sessions till now. So, and
The sessions have been good. Yeah, I've been able to attend a few throughout the day. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for that. So, welcome on stage Dr. Darcel Streeter. She is a learning scientist, global keynote speaker, nonprofit CEO, and leadership expert dedicated to advancing human development and women's leadership. As a founder of BH, excuse me, as a founder of B.HER Global and Positive Images Consulting, she empowers emerging leaders through innovative, research based leadership frameworks. Through her speaking, writing, and consulting, Dr. Streeter inspires individuals and organizations to lead with purpose, authenticity, and lasting impact. So that was a beautiful interaction of Dr. Darcy Streeter. So welcome on stage. The stage is all yours. Good luck.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So, the first thing I want to say is again, thank you so much for being here. I know it's been a long day. We've had a lot of incredible speakers. And I want to start with this question, and that is what if everything that you thought you knew about strength is incomplete? And I want you to keep that question in front of you as we move throughout the presentation. So, my talk is softness as a superpower. And I love this topic because when I was coming up in my leadership world and my leadership formation, and I started in public administration, went into the nonprofit sector, went back into the corporate. Went into the corporate sector, came back, and then went into higher education. So this is kind of in the evolution of my journey. And as my leadership roles were being uh, um, as I was growing in my leadership roles, and as I was being trained and formed and mentored, I was shaped in a very different ideology than I have today of what strength and leadership looks like. And as I have grown and as I've learned that softness is not the opposite of strength, it's the most evolved version of it. And it is a strategic skill set, it is a strategic power. I then began to understand the role that rest plays in our lives and in our lives as leaders and in our personal lives as well. And that's a strategy as well. I started to listen more to the body. I've heard a lot of people talk about regulation, some nervous system, embodied practices. And all of those things I agree with because it led me to where I am today, where in the 25-year nonprofit where we teach women, we have been serving women for 25 years. And even though we're teaching workforce readiness skills, we also teach that professional enrichment. And that is how to lead well, starting with yourself, and how to show up in any environment and how to move well in that environment as you interact and engage with people. And so we teach it here in the nonprofit space, and I teach it on the for-profit side when I am working with leaders, and especially women, mostly women, teaching how to lead from wholeness and not hurry, because it is something that I had to learn from and grow out of. So I have a whole series where I've taken this talk uh, here, obviously in the USA, but also in Paris and also in Thailand. And the Softness as a Superpower series is just something that I love to discuss. As a learning scientist, I've also accumulated a lot of data that, and I utilize those data into practices to show that the things that I'm talking about, they're just not talking points. There's actual evidence there. not just mine, or not just the ones that we pull out, but also the ones that I've been able to measure and account for. So nervous system wisdom, embodied decision making, and the hard work of leading well. Again, thank you so much for being here. Just a reminder, this talk is just not about being nice, as I alluded to earlier. This talk is about the science of leading well. I want you, if you can, just drop in the chat maybe one word you were taught that strong leadership looks like. One word, and we'll come back to that. I'll visit that question back again in just a second. So I want to talk about the myth of the strong leader, and think about the word that you kept in your mind. If you didn't drop it in the chat, think about the word uh, or what comes to mind when you think about what strong leadership looks like. What I have found as I have talked about softness as a superpower is that the same words have shown up in these chats, or in the rooms where I've been speaking. Is a lot of times it's fearless, being fearless, it's being quick and decisive, it's being tough. Those are three words that continue to show up. But that is the old model of leadership, right? The way that we were kind of handed all these ideas of what strength looks like in leadership. And they were taught in three equations. The first equation being that strength equals stoicism. That may sound familiar to you. You feel less, or at least you show less. The second equation is that speed equals competence. So the fastest answer wins, right? And how many of you have been in a setting on your team, within your team, or been in front of your boss, or maybe you with your colleague, and you were with someone who might have been in a higher role. There's a discussion, there's a question that is posed, and you feel like you have to be able to answer that very quickly because the fastest answer wins. That shows your competence, right? And that's actually not correct. But also being told or made to feel that when you pause, that reads as weakness. So a pause is not a good thing. And that also is incorrect. And then the third equation is that suppression equals professionalism. That you have to leave the body and the humanity out the door. And again, all of these are misconceptions, but we were formed, many of us have been formed in this misconception as we have come up in our leadership roles. And I'm not saying that there's not a time when you need to be stern and stoic. These things have their place. What I'm saying is that it is not the infinite model of leadership in the way that we have been taught. So I want you to look at the image that is before you to the right-hand side. You see all of these gray boxes at the top, right? These gray boxes represent the old style of leadership. We all, and if we're in leadership, then this is the box. This is what leadership looks like. This is the box that we are to be in. But as we have moved out of that, and as we have become more intentional about our mental well-being, our physical well-being, as we have understood that when we show up anywhere, we don't leave a part of us at home. We don't, we bring our lived experience into every single space that we come into, that we move into, right? And so what comes to the front is what matters according to the environment that you're in. But it doesn't mean that you have to show up and you just bring what's the professional part about you there, and every other thing that's part of your lived experience, somehow it checks out of your life. That just doesn't happen. And so as we have began to see and understand leadership differently, and understand empathy and compassion, they're not just these soft skills that we hear, but those are real tools in leadership development. That's emotional intelligence is a real thing, and it has an indirect impact on the bottom line in the way that we have begun to measure more. So as you move down these gray boxes, you begin to see how the color comes in, and the edges begin to soften, and everyone becomes distinctly themselves. That is where leadership is headed today, especially in this age of AI. You have in this age of being AI native, it has a lot to do with being discerning, with being accountable, with being human in an age that is designed by algorithms and automations and so forth. So leadership is starting to look very differently. And this is why I wanted to challenge that myth of strong leadership that many of us have come up in, and some of us may have encountered as we have moved into our leadership roles. And, these three equations, no one hands us these equations as a warning. The way that we see these equations showing up in a wrongly formed leadership is that they show up as praise, and where it's like, oh, you're so resilient, which is important to be resilient, right? Life is about resiliency. That is important. Some people may say, I don't know how you do it. And if you've ever heard someone say, I don't know how you do what you do, that you kind of get this little chip on your shoulder. You start feeling like, yeah, I must be super special. This is how leadership looks like because I'm doing something that no one understands how I do it. You start to form these wrong ideologies about what that looks like. Or someone may say, wow, she never drops the ball. And now you feel pressured to never drop the ball because that is what good leadership looks like. You never drop the ball, right? These are things that lead to wrong formation in terms of how to lead well. They wrongly inform you on what leading well looks like. And so over time, strength stops being a choice, right, and becomes an identity because you've connected to and identified with what happens when people say certain things, and they attach that to you being a good leader. So we want to make sure that you're not auditioning for a role, right, that uh, you shouldn't be responsible for maintaining. You're not auditioning for a role that is designed by how people are accrediting what your strength looks like in leadership. When you when you answer to these things, right, when you start responding to how people praise your lack of pausing, your lack of rest, your burnout, your overextension, when you start responding to that, and that's how you design your movement in any space by, there will be a time that the bill comes due. A Gallup poll shows, and this number has been repeated many times, not just here, but in other environments that's talking about the same thing. But the Gallup poll shows that over $322 billion a year is related to burnout and turnover. Okay, and 77% of executives report decision fatigue. You're so tired, you're so burned out, you're so overextended that you can't even make a good decision, a regulated decision, right? From a place of not being stressed, of not being burned out, but a place where you've had a chance to pause and you're speaking from a place of regulation. 77% of executives report decision fatigue. And for women, especially women of color, that number climbs even higher. So that's not a character flaw in the generation. That is a design flaw in the model. Just look at those top gray boxes there. And these assumptions have built the rooms that you're now walking into, but they should not build you. Okay. And I want you, especially this generation that we're in now, I want you to consider something, and that is that you did not fail to become strong. Because if you're rejecting this ideology of leadership that's been handed to you, good for you. It does not mean that you failed to become strong, right? That is incorrect. That is a misnomer. As a researcher and a learning scientist, I don't cheerlead for those old ideologies that I was formed in. I don't. I cheerlead the people who come in and say, you know what, I've got to take a break. I've got to pull back. I've got to rest. I am overextended. I'm feeling burned out. People who would communicate these things. That's what I cheerlead, because that is going to sustain you throughout your leadership journey, right? Again, you did not fail to become strong. You arrived already wired for difference, something that was more of a complete model of leadership. And you notice the cost. So if you're quite aware of when you're carrying weight and how that weight might be affecting, how you're showing up and how you're making decisions, right? You've noticed the cost and you've asked, why does exhaustion or why is exhaustion a status symbol? Answer that. Why is exhaustion a status symbol, guys? Right? Why? No. We need to keep questioning whether burnout should be a leadership credential. And let me tell you, it should not be. And the research backs this up. The skills that are most critical to sustainable, innovative leadership are precisely the ones that the old model dismisses, right? And so, what if everything we have been taught about strength is incomplete? Not wrong, just incomplete. Strength is not endurance at all costs. Leadership is not overfunctioning, and burnout is not success. All right. So, whomever might be mentoring or coaching you, and they're weaving those things in and telling you that this is what you need to show how strong you are, you let them know, I'm sorry, that is incomplete information. And Dr. Streeter said so, but also the data points to it. So, there are three things. These are the three things, these subtopics that I want to talk about. And I want you to know and notice that these are competencies. They may not have ever been presented to you as competencies, but they are. These are not personality traits. These are competencies. All right. They're not vibes. Nervous system wisdom, embodied decision making, relational intelligence. Yeah, these are competencies. And if it's a competency, it can be learned, right? It can be learned and it belongs to you. So when you begin to understand the value of nervous system wisdom, that is regulating yourself from the inside out. You're not letting the external pressure keep you dysregulated. That is understanding that I have to regulate my internal self in order for me to function at the level, for me to bring the best version of myself forward, right? And so when you understand that nervous system wisdom, what the data that the body is giving you, and you're listening to it, is a competency, right? It's incredibly self-aware. And again, it should belong to you. When your body is bringing data to you, when your body is feeling exhausted and tired and all of these things, that's not your body betraying you. When your body just, sometimes you feel like, I just can't go on. Yeah, that's not your body betraying you. When it tenses up, that's your body trying to have a conversation with you and just begging you to listen. And I would ask that you do. Your nervous system reads the room well before your mind can analyze it. All right. And so the reading that it gives you is about regulating your internal state so that any pressure that you're encountering in front of you does not make the decision for you, because pressure can cause us to make certain decisions. And you don't want pressure to be your decision maker. All right. Keep that front of mind. You don't want pressure to be your decision maker. Part of the brain is responsible for ethical reasoning, right? Creativity and judgment. And those things are the first casualty of chronic stress. And so, if you've ever, in my leadership journey, I've had many, many, many moments of chronic stress. Not today, because I've learned, but many moments of chronic stress and feeling the pressure to subdue that stress. And subdue what that stress might be doing to me, because I got to keep showing up because I rarely drop the ball, right? Going back to that mindset. Chronic stress can cut cognitive flexibility, nearly in half. Just think about that. Half of your cognitive flexibility is inaccessible because of stress. Okay. Regulation is not a spa day, ladies. And if there are any men here, it's not a spa day. Regulation is the infrastructure under every good decision that you will ever make. Okay. Embodied decision making, your body produces data. Again, you may tense up when you start to feel pressure. Your jaw may get tight. You may even feel shallow breath sometimes when you're up against something and it makes you really nervous, or somebody has given you a deadline that or given you a task that you're exhausted, you're too exhausted to really complete, but you got to push through it because you're the go-to person. Oh my goodness. These are things that shows up in the body, and the body again is giving you that data. We've been trained to override that. I now train leaders to read those things. And the third is relational intelligence. So listen, trust is not a soft extra. Trust is the operating system. Innovation happens when people still feel safe enough to say the true thing out loud. Now, there's a way that you say everything, but innovation happens when people feel safe enough to say the true thing out loud. Embodied empathy, y'all, is the human edge here. Machines can process information about pain, but machines cannot sit with a person in their pain. That is your edge, and it will always be your edge. So, when you think about nervous system wisdom, embodied decision making, and relational intelligence, which of these three were you ever actually taught? Okay, especially taught as a leadership principle. Feel free to drop that in the chat. And I do see some questions in the chat. I am going to answer when we get to the end of this because we're almost there. So, the, for those who are asking, what are some practices? I'm glad that you asked. I have 5 proprietary frameworks, and this framework is not built just from theories and just from having a talk because I have had experiences. It brings in lived experience, but it also brings in data that I've tracked, and it brings in data, other peer-reviewed data that is out there that has been proven. So my pause framework, and it's something that I have literally done, so I know how it works, and I've done it in different settings. My pause framework, PAWS, is pause, assess, witness, and shift. This is your practical, repeatable methodology for leading well in real time. All right, so we talked about competencies, the nervous system wisdom, the embodied decision making, and all of that being a competency. Well, competencies need a method. And this is the method through which those competencies can show on the surface. Again, the pause framework. So let me tell you where I started paying attention to this and why this became my framework. I'm in a meeting and I spent months building something. I was working on a project. Actually, I spent months as the lead on this particular project. This was years ago. Get into a meeting and I'm challenged, and I was challenged publicly in that particular meeting. And it was by someone whom I respected. So before, I don't know, I felt, I won't say I felt angry, but I didn't understand why I was being challenged, but I also felt compelled to show up in that moment. And I did not mind being challenged. It was the way that that challenge was happening because we had been in conversation. We had spent a lot of time, going back and forth on the project that I was working on. So in that moment, I felt like the challenge was more to kind of dishevel me. It was kind of to show me up. And that's honestly what I felt in that moment. And the heat hit my chest, you guys, my jaw set, and every trained instinct said for me to defend, to explain, to win. And that's what I was taught to do. And that's what I was known to do, to win, to be able to defend my position and win, close it out. But you know what? This framework taught me something differently because that gets exhausting after a while. And it also calls you to see everything from a negative, to bring your presuppositions into every situation and see everything from a lens that might not be there. So I had to learn to reframe because some of that pressure and that stress that I was feeling was because of stress, right? Or some of the pressure that I was feeling and the desire to defend came from the pressure also that I had that was mounting up on me. And so that is the moment that I said, wait, and I had a reframe. The reframe was so beautiful because it interrupted me. This is a 90-second reframe, but it caused me to pause in that moment. This is, interrupting what I was thinking and how I was going to react. I took a quick breath. All of this is happening within me. This is an internal thing. Not everyone knows what's going on around me. It can happen just that fast. I'm talking about 90 seconds. And in that breath, you create like the only thing that pressure ever takes from you, and that is the space to choose, right? When you pause, you give space for choice. And if you have come up in high pressure situations, often, first, you're not taught to pause. You're taught to answer, think quickly, and move right now, move in the now. But that takes away also opportunities to pause. And, that is where your power lives, in that pause. They even have a talk show called The Power of the Pause, where this is the very thing that I talk about, regulating from you're regulating your from an internal state of peace and calm. And the assess is ask your one question, and that is, what is happening in this moment right now? What is actually true for what's going on right now? Right? Pay attention to what's happening in your body, because your body gets activated in these high stress pressure moments, right? But it's also information. What's happening in your body? And is what you're thinking actually what is happening, right? And sometimes it's hard to decipher that when you're in an activated moment. But you're in the room, and in when you're in the room and you're dealing with the person, you have to ask yourself, is the person actually attacking me, or are they protecting something? Are they trying to show a different version, or is there an answer they're trying to get me to? You have to consider these things in the moment, and you can't bring some of the things that happen when you're kind of chronically stressed. You have to learn how to not bring those to the surface of the moment that you're in, right? So when I assessed what was going on, what was happening in me, what possibly that was tied to in that moment, I was able to witness that, to observe what was going on in me, and to pass judgment within. This is all happening internally. And you can almost, when you practice this intentionally, you can almost immediately start to see a pattern. And you can see the pattern in the people that you're dealing with. You can see the pattern in yourself. And honestly, it's okay to see patterns within yourself. That is being superhuman, y'all. Okay, that is being superhuman. Witness separates self-awareness from self-attack. So that's why you take a pause, you assess what's actually happening in you and in the room. And when you witness that, when you serve as a witness to the moment that you're in, that actually separates and reframes what's happening for to you being self-aware from you thinking that you're being attacked, right? And then you shift into that regulated state. You choose the response that matches your values instead of matching your adrenaline. And so mine sounded like, when this was happening, I was, you're seeing a risk that I have not addressed, going back to how I was being challenged in that meeting. My response then turned to, you're seeing a risk that I have not addressed. So, let's walk through that. And that one sentence actually reframed the whole moment for me. All right. And so that entire cycle, again, it happens so quickly. It may not happen as quickly as you start practicing it, because you have to intentionally pause. You have to be willing to assess what is happening within you and happening in the moment. And then you have to give witness to that. That means it's just acknowledgement. And then you shift according to what that situation deserves, not from a place of defense or attack. All right, that's the whole thing in 90 seconds. PAWS. I'd love to know which one of those things have you practiced? Have you practiced some version of this? Pause under pressure. I want to look at going back to what I explained about what happens when you actually do pay attention. Pause under pressure is this: you see the line, you see the image, right? You see the trigger point that happens, but then look, when you're reactive, you escalate. When you pause and you deregulate or regulate yourself rather from a dysregulated state, you see how the line kind of goes down. It brings you back down, right? You're already activated. The trigger activated you, but the reactive path is a threat response, and that's what takes the will. That's what causes you to defend. That's what causes you to over explain. That's what causes you to go quiet. You decide fast, not because you have a quick decision, and not because you're even deciding right, but you're deciding because deciding is that discomforting moment that you're actually experiencing, that you're in. Real issues survive. The real issue rather survives the meeting. So when you think about what it looks like to dysregulate or to regulate from a dysregulated state, and you think about being or deactivating your activation, then there's something that also happens within you, right? That gray line, it does not mean that you're crashing or that you're giving up or that you're hiding. It means that you're bringing yourself back down to a point of control, right? You're bringing yourself back down to a regulated path. A regulated path is not the slow lane, it is the shortcut. And it gives you space, again, for choice. It gives you space for cognitive flexibility. So here's your practice this week. This answers to some of the questions that I see in the chat. Uh, Again, I'm a learning scientist, so I'm not going to leave you with inspiration and no practice if any of this talk has been inspiring to you at all. Inspiration without practice in my mind is simply entertainment in the first place. So when I say softness is a practice, we're not talking about a personality. We're talking about these three moves, and you can pick one of these this week to start implementing and learning how to implement the pause framework, the pause system. So the first move: run one full pause cycle on purpose. Pick a pressure moment. You know that it's already coming. You know when that meeting every Wednesday with so and so happens, you get a little triggered, you get a little activated. You know that's going to happen. It's already on the calendar to happen. It's a scheduled pressure point, right? When that happens, or because you know that's going to happen, decide that you're going to run the full pause cycle. Be prepared to do it in that moment and see if anything happens when you're, in that moment. You're going to pause, you're going to assess, witness, and shift. The next move is to name your body's first signal. Was it in your chest? Was it the way you breathe? Was it in your jaw? Was it the way you paced? Did your pace change when you were in there? You cannot regulate a signal that you have never met. So you have to name the signal so that you can learn how to regulate it. Remember, the signal is data. It's not saying that you have a flaw. And then the move number three: let's trade one performance for one truth. In a meeting, replace the rehearsed answer that you would normally have before using the pause system, right, with what you actually assess to be true. Try to move away from defense. Try to move away from the need to prove yourself. Try to move away from the need to win. Uh, Move into the place to regulate, because from a regulated state, you can present things much more clearly. And that is when you present from a clear state, you're already winning. All right. Leading well is hard work. It is just a different kind of hard work than what we were taught. It's also meaningful work. So, again, lead from wholeness, not performance, because you innovate from a place of genuine human strength. You're stepping, if you're not already in a leadership role and you're stepping into a leadership role, it's going to be important. And then consider, you're not only stepping into leadership, you're stepping into leadership in the age of AI. And everyone says that machines are the story today. They are not. All right. Organizations pour investment into AI at rates that dwarf what they're investing into the human nervous system that will operate the AI technology. The technology is ready. The question is whether the leader is. What defines your generation cannot be automated, ladies and gentlemen, if you're here. What defines your generation has to be felt. There has to be felt empathy, imagination. And what defines our generation today: felt empathy, imagination, cultural intelligence, nervous system wisdom. All of these things are so important. And this becomes the authority that comes from the trust that you gain and develop. These things must be lived into. Okay, they must be lived into. Lead from wholeness, not performance. Innovate from a place of genuine human strength. All right, you're not late to the old model of leadership, because I don't like, and let's dismiss the old model of leadership. But you are arriving early and have a chance to arrive regulated to the new model of leadership. These are some of the books. I do have a series under Softness as a Superpower. The Pause Protocol is my favorite one. I work rest in as a revenue. I may, instead of planning for, a vacation or a short vacation or a short time away 3 weeks ahead, there's nothing wrong with planning. I may take some time in the middle of the week, maybe 4 hours out of the day. Maybe I pick up the heavy things. I step away from everything, especially if I'm in a project and I need to make, some really heavy decisions. I step away to make sure I'm regulating first, because guess what? Rest is revenue. Rest does impact the bottom line. All right. So the pause protocol. I also have a book that was the first one that I published, called Reflections of Becoming Her, Healed, Effective, and Reigning. That was after my experience being in the higher education space, being in the corporate space, being in the public administration space. These are all the spaces and places where I have been in and led and worked and had to excel in. I've had many failures. Not everything I did was right because obviously we learn by error, right? So this is just this Reflections of Becoming Her captures all of that. But in the Softness as a Superpower series, you see the titles right here: Softness Signals and Systems, that deals with leaders who are in the AI, who are AI collaborators, who's rolling out, implementing AI models, learning how to uh, make sure that these models are culturally relevant to the environment that they're in, and they reflect the people who are actually going to use these models. So we talk about that. The field guide, where softness is a superpower for newer leaders in this era. We talk about what softness actually is and what it is not. The deconstruction journal, listen, that whole what strength should look like, I've deconstructed all of that, and have brought forth, our new way of being a strong leader, of being a relevant leader. And I just want you to think about, if there's anything that you take away from, if there's any book or anything that you take away from what I'm talking about in the Softness series, the pause protocol is the one. That is where you're going to find the pause framework, the PAWS framework as well. But this pause protocol is very, very, very important. You have to learn how to pause and regulate your internal state so that you can move with intentionality. So let's keep building, guys. Let's keep growing. Let's keep developing. Let's keep becoming. These are all the ways that you can reach me. I have updated my title on, or my extension on LinkedIn, but you still should be able to reach me at DL Streeter. But it is Dr. Darcel Streeter on LinkedIn as well. If you run into anything, if you want to become friends on LinkedIn, and maybe we can collaborate together one day on something, if you're doing something in the leadership space or in the AI space. And these are also the other ways that you can reach me. Thank you for joining the talk. I definitely appreciate it. And I'm
Thank you
going to turn
so
it back
much,
over.
Dr. Daxel, for sharing the wonderful presentation and inspiring story, and with wonderful points. So you got a lot of questions. So I would like to share you only multiple questions for the time being. So,
Okay.
uh, yeah, what is one key takeaway you want us to remember?
Oh, gosh. The pause is not weakness. The pause is powerful regulation.
Okay, it's short and sweet. Okay. And can you share one simple technique to calm our nervous system?
Yeah, the PAWS framework, the pause framework, that is pause in the moment where you're feeling high pressure, high stress, and you feel that reduced cognitive flexibility. Assess what's happening in you at that moment. Name it. Be be aware of what's happening. Assess it in that moment, and then be a witness to it. That's the naming of it. So when you take a pause, you're assessing why you're pausing. You're assessing what's happening in your body. You're assessing what is going on. If there's another person that's involved in the high pressure moment that you're feeling, you're assessing what's happening there, and be honest. You have to bring trust into your pause. Be honest with that and give it a name, because again, you can't regulate what you don't name. And once you become a witness to it, meaning that you're giving it a name, you're acknowledging that this is what's happening in the moment, then you can shift. Again, you're not shifting in response to defense or the situation that triggered you. You're shifting so that you can move in regulation. You can move with a clear state of thinking. You're shifting for what's going to keep you going and keep you functioning at a high level, not what's going to respond to the thing that triggered you in the first place.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering these questions. And you have a lot of questions in the chat session. So if you want to answer it, so I can share you all these questions to your email address after this session. So you can go ahead and answer them. So thank you so much for joining this Global Virtual Summit 2022. It's really a pleasure to have you all the beautiful ladies at one stage and sharing their inspiring and motivational presentations and encouraging them each other. Thank you and have a lovely day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
So please to join our next session. Dr. Arvind is already in the backstage.